Hey guys, welcome to the podcast this week.
Hello, Mike Kate.
Yes, it's good to see you.
It's great to be seen.
Yeah. Did you have a good weekend?
I did have a good weekend. It was unique. You know, I kind of mentioned it in the sermon as kind of a jest, but it was sad. If you're a YouTube TVer,
oh my goodness,
you don't have ESPN or any of the ABC family. So
know.
SEC got bought out by the ABC. So you have all day Saturday, SEC on ABC. Not now, you don't, unless you have the full version of the ESPN app. So anyway, all that to say, I got more accomplished on Saturday than I generally do in the yard and sermon prep because I didn't veg in front of the TV all day.
So my wife, Lori, she was really upset about the YouTube TV thing. And even more so, she was upset at me that I hadn't shared with her that I received an email from YouTube TV saying,
how dare you
that ABC was not
her.
going to. Yeah, I know. So it was... yeah, I didn't know that was going to get me in trouble, but nonetheless, we didn't get to watch football. So
yeah, that's okay.
It was okay.
Yeah, all the teams won.
right?
All the teams.
Finally,
Yeah, finally, all the teams. Well, Mississippi State they won.
we did.
Southern Miss didn't play, so that kind of counts as a win. And Ole Miss won. So
Yeah. So for our viewers today, we've got Anna Clayton Nagel here, who
Yes.
is a guest on our podcast today.
Excited to be here.
a great guest. It's gonna be awesome.
And if you were in the service yesterday, you saw just a little snippet, a little video right before Josh's message that told her story, or just a little glimpse at her story. So, but Anna Clayton, why don't you take a moment just to tell us, one, who you are, and you're kind of have a role at Broadmoor right now. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm just absolutely honored to be here. I think it's so cool. But my name is Anna Clayton Nagel. I am currently an intern. I'm the adult discipleship intern with Broadmoor, which has just been such a gift to be able to do. I'm kind of, just a few hours a week, kind of part-time, but full-time I work full-time for Mississippi College. So I'm one of the recruiters there. So that's been very fun. Went to school there, graduated, like 5.5 years ago, which is crazy.
So long ago.
It was so long ago, really. So that's been great. But yeah, a little bit about my story is that I was raised by multiple people in my life, which was such a great thing. But in that, I didn't have a lot of stability with parents, and just both of my parents kind of struggling with substance abuse and not really knowing kind of what that meant. I think the Lord, looking back now, shielded me from a lot of it, which is such a great thing. But I didn't, there were just a lot of things that I think I missed, or I think I lacked in childhood and growing up and figuring out, kind of even now figuring everything out on my own. Cause still as a 27-year-old, I'm like, oh, what do I do with this? Like, how do I get new tires? Like all the things that I'm living through currently. So I just I see that a little bit with that, but the Lord was good and, brought me to a small Baptist church my 9th grade year when I transferred schools in Yazoo County. And they were very, proactive, I guess, with just pouring into me. And like they had me on their prayer list that I didn't even know existed, which was so kind. And I think they just knew that there was kind of something I was missing. I grew up Catholic, and so I viewed God as a king, which is who he is.
Sure. But
that was kind of it. I recited the prayers, I learned the things, the steps to take. It was very works-based in my life. And so learning in high school, I guess I was around 14, 15, that I could have a relationship with God really opened the doors of just like who Christ is and how he draws near to us. And I think that's been something that I get to learn about every single day. And now it's been, I can't count how many years, but just of following the Lord and what that looks like, just being able to look back and see has been really cool.
You mentioned when we were talking earlier just about a turning point. I guess it was around college. You said you felt like a turning point in your life.
Yeah.
Can you say more about that?
Yeah. So, like I said, I went to Mississippi College and was growing in my walk with the Lord there. But I graduated May of 2020. So if you remember what's going on during that time.
Just a little thing in the blip in the history of time.
Right. I left for spring break and never came back. It was a whole thing. But I had a lot of things going for me. I knew that summer I was going to be working at a summer camp, and I knew that fall I was actually moving to Birmingham and going to be participating in a discipleship program. So I had these beautiful gifts that the Lord had gifted to me. But when things started getting rocky and things started canceling, I was like, well, okay, at least like I was kicked off campus basically. Obviously, we weren't allowed to come back to the dorms because of everything. So I was like, well, at least I'm going to camp this summer. Like I started to look for,
Sure.
I think as
next?
humans, we all look to see what's next. I was like, at least I have camp. And then that was kind of like, oh, that canceled in April, I guess. And I'm like, whoa, I've never known a summer without summer camp. And so I was like, well, at least I know like when all this is said and done, at least I'm going to get to go to Birmingham and still, be able to live out, move in and being a part of a new city. So exciting. And then that was kind of up in the air of like, is that going to happen? And so I was like, God, what is this? These are beautiful things that you've given me. I was serving the Lord at summer camp and I was also going to participate in a discipleship program. These are beautiful gifts, God. Why am I not getting to participate in that? And I think there was just a moment where I can't remember what the scripture was. I apologize, but just that clinging to God and what that looks like of like, I realized that though they are great things, they are beautiful things, I was holding on to those rather than God's goodness and God's closeness. And I think last week, Josh, you mentioned it, talking about your quiet time. And that was something that I kind of resonated with of like, I wanted to gravitate towards those things, which are such good things that,
They're certainly good.
it's certainly good, but it was not him.
That's right.
And that point blank, just I needed him.
Yeah. They can become incredibly counterfeit. And God is so gracious. Exodus tells us his character, right? So he's slow to anger and he's abounding in steadfast love. And those are true because we see it in our life. Whenever we cling to the good things, but maybe not godly things at the moment, he's not quick to be angry at us or punish us because how dare you choose a counterfeit over me? And I think maybe that's, because we grow up in an angry world, we feel like that should be true. But he's always gracious enough to let us feel the tension, at least for me, feel the tension of, hey, this isn't as real as you think it is. This isn't going to give you what you hope it's going to give you. Only I can do that for you. And so in his grace, he allows us to experience something that is not as great as it could be so that we can truly, as we'll see today, taste and see how good he really is.
Right.
So thank you so much for sharing part of your story. And I say this often as someone who grew up Baptist for sure, but in South Mississippi, we're surrounded by Catholics everywhere. And so in my first pastorate was my home church at New Palestine in Picayune. And they're legitimately anything south of I-10. And if you're listening to this, you know what that means. Like it's a different world south of I-10. And that's across, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. It's just a different world. And it's heavily Catholic. And so whenever we were in New Palestine, we saw loads of people come to faith in Jesus Christ and at a later age, and most of them were Catholic. And I will say it from the rooftop today, the best church member is a converted Catholic person to Protestantism because they grow up with doing all the things, right?
Yeah.
So they know the prayers, they know the scriptures, they know all the things, but now they have a reason and a passion behind all of it. Dude, they make the best church members. So I'm so happy you're at Broadmoor, and I'm thankful the way the Lord grew you, but man, I'm thankful you were part of a Protestant church, particularly here at Broadmoor. So
Yes, I'm very
what
thankful.
a great journey.
Thank you.
So for our viewers, if you want to hear more of Anna Clayton's story, we have a full version of it on our YouTube channel. So you can go there and listen to that and get a little more detail and hear a little more about the things that she shared with us. And so and you may hear a little more throughout the conversation here. But so the topic, Josh, you camped out on Psalm 34 and provide a little context. So this is David, and this was written right after a situation that he faced in 1 Samuel 21.
Right.
And so you want to tell us just a little bit about that for the context?
Sure, yeah. So it's fun to go back and kind of study it because all the names and the unique ties that are there. But there's this guy named Abimelech, right? And Abimelech is actually Achish, which is the king of Gath. And all of that to say, if you're not familiar, there is a guy that David fights. Remember, who's a really tall guy named Goliath.
Yeah.
He kills Goliath, cuts off Goliath's head, if you remember that, with Goliath's sword. Well, David evidently gives the sword over to the priest. The priest puts it in the temple. Well, as David is on the run now from his own guy, Saul, who is the king of Israel at the moment, and David, this is where the tension comes into play, right? David is prophesied to be the next king. He's anointed to be the next king, but he's not the next king yet. Why? Because there's already a current king named Saul. Well, Saul realizes his time's coming to a close. So that's in 1 Samuel 15. And now to do his best to thwart God's plan, he wants to kill David, because if he can get rid of David, he can get rid of the next king that's going to be there. Well, David gets on the run. He runs away from Saul, runs to Gath, crazy enough, carrying Goliath's sword into Goliath's hometown, right?
Out of the frying pan into the fire.
Out of the frying pan into the fire, exactly right. And so there's this moment where God has promised him good, promised him a life, promised him, and not even just that, man. I know everybody's the same. But David was going to be king of God's people. Like that is a huge promise. And now he is standing legitimately in the fire, waiting on God to move, and God doesn't move, seemingly doesn't move. And so he resorts to, what do I do? What do I do? I can act like an idiot. I can act like I'm crazy. In the wording, we didn't say it yesterday just because, it's right before lunch, but because it's a podcast and this is like Broadmoor Plus, like legitimately he throws up in his beard and it runs down his face. And he's clawing at the door. So like, get the scene for the craziest of situations. And Abimelech looks and says, who brought this madman in I got enough of these crazies in my kingdom. I don't need one more. Get him out of here. And so they throw David out where he's free. And so there's a moment that potentially is, God, where were you? Like, I needed you. You didn't show up. I did this myself. That's what he could have said. But he didn't. And that's what Psalm 34 is. So seemingly, maybe just months after it happens. And again, there's a wilderness period for David, right? So before he's in the palace, he's on the run. And we believe that Psalm 34 is written probably in a cave. So he even still doesn't have the niceties of being the king or people serving him. He's still legitimately on the run, and he writes Psalm 34, which is kind of cool. So if it feels like God has abandoned you, or maybe you had to do life by yourself, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, David gives us a different vantage point. Maybe life didn't turn out the way that we planned it would, but God is still good nonetheless. And he gives us a glimpse on how we, as people who walk a very similar path, at least in our mind, how we can see God as good and, well, taste and see and celebrate who he is.
Yeah, and I find it really interesting too, because sometimes we find ourselves in difficult situations that are of our own doing, right? Like
We did it to get into it.
We made a dumb decision, and and we're going through the trial now.
Consequences are our own fault.
And sometimes it's things that seemingly no fault or doing of our own.
Right.
We find ourselves in a difficult situation that God allows, and I would say God allows the other thing too. I mean, he's sovereign over everything, but and then we question, where God is when we don't necessarily see him or see the way that he's moving or what he's doing. And it's in those moments that we have to trust the truth,
that's right,
and not our feelings.
That's right. Yeah. That's exactly right. And to make that point, always right, our feelings are fickle. That's a fun word to say. They're not our friends. I was talking to a counselor friend yesterday, and she was talking to her husband. They were sitting together, and they say often in their family, of course, they're a counseling family, that feelings are silly. And in the moment, like she's sitting with people who panic disorder, and if you've ever experienced that, like that's a whole thing. And then just to think, feelings are just silly. Like it's just a thing. But yeah, going back to something that you said with these feelings that are silly, I think, now I didn't say this yesterday, but I think this is a safe place to say this. And at least this is true about my life, so I won't put it on both of you or any of our listeners. I feel like when we say, God, where were you? Or God, why didn't you? A lot of times that is us wanting God to be the scapegoat, right? So it is us probably more than likely, Mike, doing something that causes a natural consequence. We did the stupid thing, or we did the not so smart thing, or we did the less than wise thing. And regardless of how we paint it up, we now have a consequence that we don't like, and we have to live in it. And so we can either get mad at us, which we generally don't like to do because we like us, or we can get mad at God and say, where were you? Why didn't you step in? And if we're honest, why didn't you step in and stop me from being stupid? Yeah. Like I've prayed that prayer, guys, and I still pray that prayer today. Why, if you're all knowing and all good, like, yeah, stop it there. But stop me from even wanting to do that prayer. But here's the beautiful thing. God is big enough to handle that. And he's gracious enough not to, using the very Old Testament, Old English, smite us for having even thought that way. So the reason for the sermon series, right? So wholly broken when God wounds, we know that whatever God does, he does because he loves us.
Right.
He's good. He's faithful. He's true. There is no deceit in him. There's no sin in him. Anything he allows to touch our life is ultimately for his glory and ultimately for his good. Now, I know that there are people, and myself being included, we've experienced some things that we think that was not good or godly. So you're telling me God allowed that to happen? And the answer is, and we don't know the fullness of this yet, right? Yeah, he did, and I don't know why. And I may never know why this side of eternity, but again, I have to trust what I know more than what I feel,
Right.
because feelings are silly. And so I know that God is good, and that's the premise, I think, of all of Psalm 34, reminding the reader, reminding actually the singer, because they would be singing these, that God is faithful and God is good even in spite of us. Even on our worst day, God is still good. And on our best day, God is still good. So come and taste and see, and let us exalt his name together.
I think something I learned with my walk with the Lord is writing down my prayer request and like just writing down really all prayers, because I think so many times we kind of forget what we've asked God about. And so to see, I tell everyone this, but I have a journal of like prayer, and it's like paragraphs of like, God, I really want this. I really need this. Or even if it's just small things of like, hey, my friend's taking a test today, God, be with her. And I get to see like, she made an A on the test, and I get to see his goodness in little small things. And it's going to be probably prayers I would forget about, little ones, if I didn't write them down. So I think that's just a way to see he's very intentional, obviously, about like when he's answering prayers in his ways. So we're going to see the goodness more than we see, I guess, him not answering those prayers in ways that we may not, or he is answering them in different ways, or maybe he's just saying straight up no, which I think is such a beautiful thing, because that's been a big thing of like, I get to look back from years past and be like, why did I pray for that? Thank you, God, honestly, for not answering that prayer.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
I think that's just been a lot to be able to see kind of throughout my life.
The great philosopher Garth Brooks once made a song about that, and it was "Thank God for Unanswered Prayers."
Yeah.
So without going into the details of the song, it's very much true.
And that is one country song that I actually know. So yeah,
It's so good. Great philosopher Garth Brooks once said.
yeah. So I think often we feel like that, when God, I had a thought and it actually just left me.
It left you.
It did
But I
leave
bet
me,
it was
but
fantastic.
It did. No. So we often feel like that. Let me ask this. Verse 17. So we see here that God delivers us from them all,
Right.
from all of these things. What does that mean for us as believers? Because clearly we don't always feel like we've been delivered, right? God doesn't always answer in the way that we might have preferred, and sometimes we don't have the hindsight or the benefit of the hindsight even to see. Sometimes we get to see that God has delivered, and we see the unanswered prayer and thank him for that.
Yeah.
But other times we don't get the benefit of that. And so what does it mean actually for that he delivers us?
Yeah, so it's multifaceted. As you can imagine, anything with God is always multifaceted and hardly ever according to our definition of, right? So we want, and many times our Western 21st century world, we want deliverance to be never having to experience hard or having to experience adversity, right? That's what we would like deliverance to mean. Like if we were heading towards a situation that was difficult, before we got there, God would step in and keep us from experiencing that hard thing, which the history of the Bible tells us a different story, that most of the time, almost exclusively 100% of the time, God doesn't necessarily keep the hard away from his people, because it's through the hard situations that he is going to meet them and transform them. And they'll never be the same because of it. And many times they'll even like create an altar after the experience is over to remember God's faithfulness in the moment. And they would have never had that testimony if they didn't have that experience. And, I guess to quote the old cliche, you don't have a testimony without the test. And this truly is the test where every time and time again through the scriptures, hard situations, whether it is because somebody else chose this for you and you did nothing, but now you're in it, or you chose this and now you're in it because of your own choices, right? So that's the full of the New Testament, particularly the Gospels, where Jesus is meeting people either who were crippled from birth or were caught in adultery. Either way, he meets them both with compassion, but he meets them in their pain, right? And it's in that moment that he delivers them. So the deliverance could be, you never saw it. Generally, that's not going to be the case. Most of the time, it's going to be, God is going to meet you in it. Mm-hmm. Now, just one more caveat to this. Sometimes we would say deliverance means that whatever the bad is, it won't have a full effect, right? So to be delivered would mean, let's say death is coming towards you and God steps in and delivers you from death. So even like Lazarus, right? So Lazarus died, got buried, but then he got brought back out. For us, we have to remember, as believers, remember, truth is better than what we feel. Mm-hmm. The truth is, death has no sting because of what Jesus has done on the cross. And so even deliverance, let's say with sickness, let's say it's a cancer diagnosis or a fatal car wreck, like we would say, God didn't deliver me out of that, or God didn't deliver my loved one out of that affliction. Where was God then? And again, we have to remember what is true, that we know to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And that is a very real thing. That's not just something we say to make us feel better at funerals. This side of eternity is less than what is coming for us, right? The next step, as we breathe our last breath here and we breathe our first breath into eternity, that is infinitely better. Mm-hmm. And so even delivering us out of them all, death is a bit of a deliverance for us. Mm-hmm. And so we need to remember that in all things, God is there. That's the point. God is with you. Mm-hmm. And we're coming up on Advent. And the beauty of the first name that Jesus gets is we will call his name Emmanuel, which means God with us. God is the deliverer who steps into our mess and walks us faithfully through it.
And so I sort of remembered the thought that I had earlier, but because I think often we set people up, and I say we, but I think, there's a poor theology, right? That would say that, hey, if you follow Jesus, you're gonna be healthy, wealthy, wise. You're not gonna have any trouble, and things are gonna go smooth sailing for you. I think we know experientially that that's not the case,
right?
And we even see here in verse 19, it says, "Many are the afflictions, of believers," and so. Yet, I think when people experience those troubles and they kind of come in with that mindset, then they become disillusioned and disappointed, like God should have done something,
right?
And and there's this, you talk about people, or you hear about people who are angry at God for for allowing things to happen, and yet we know that things are going to happen,
yes, right.
And yet we have the promise that He'll be with us.
That's right, and this should go without saying, but I don't want it to, just in case you needed to hear it, whoever's listening to this. It's okay to be mad at God. Like he's big enough to handle our mad. Because if he's our father and we are his children, I think about my own kids. Like when my daughter Mary Joy, because I have Gideon who is 17, Mary Joy who is 9, and Lydia who is 5. And all of them are very uniquely different. But Mary Joy is... my wife and I joke, she's my trigger kid, right? So she and I are so much alike that we can set each other off quicker than anybody else. And there are times that I'll be emotionally invested, and I would say that's probably the most ungodlike that I am towards her. But I'm like, I'm fighting with a 9-year-old and I'm going to win as a 42-year-old man. But there are other times where I think I'm in a healthier headspace, and I can't help but think, if this is true of me today in this earthly, fallen, broken form, that I will tell Mary Joy something, and legitimately she is fuming. Like I can almost, like the cartoon, I can see the steam coming out of her ears. She will cross her arms and stomp her feet and look at me. And she's legitimately angry. But there's nothing but joy in my heart to think my daughter is in my presence and has, honestly, the gumption to do that in my presence, but to know that I love her and she loves me. And she can stomp all she wants to her room, and she can be mad and the steam coming out of her ears. In some ways, that makes me love her more, because we are connected in this really cool, intimate, strangely fiery moment. I can't help but think in many ways that God, when we're mad at him or sad at him or struggling with his goodness, as a father looks down at a 9-year-old daughter and would say, "Baby, I know you don't understand, but I love you." I can almost hear God whisper that into my ears. But you're right. The poor theology, or at least the poor belief, leads us to a poor theology, which leads us to a poor relationship. And so that's why right theology matters. And I think that's why it's important for us to preach right theology, to sing right theology, to study right theology, because it helps us in our relationship with God. But yeah, so Mayor Joy, trigger kid, steam coming out of the ears. But I do think, man, God is not upset that we are mad at him, because life is hard. And he's promised that he will one day make it right. He'll to quote the Jesus Storybook Bible, if you guys are familiar with that, he will come to make all the sad things come untrue. That means they're sad things. And it's right for us to be sad at sad things. But one day that's all going to go away, but not today.
There was a guy in our life group yesterday who brought this up, and I thought it was interesting because, and maybe it's a question some people are asking. If we look at David's story in this 1 Samuel 21, we see that, he gets in this situation. God, was not acting on his behalf in his mind or in his view, and so he acts crazy, right? He does these things to seemingly get himself out of a bad situation. And so this guy in our life group actually made the observation, God sometimes gives us a brain, or I guess he always gives us a brain, not sometimes, but he gives us the abilities to find ways to navigate difficult things, and is that always the way God works, or should we view it as any less God whenever we feel like, hey, we've sort of navigated our way out of a thing?
Yes. There's a couple of questions in there. Number one, it's always God, and so I don't think there's anything that's less God, right? But I do think, just experientially, that there are plenty of times that the Lord, in our free will, allows us to will and work within His will that has been trusted to us. But it is through our actions how we are going to take hold of what His will is going to be for our life. So for example, there are situations where I can't explain it, but God stepped in and changed the course of my life, whether that is stopping me from doing something or stopping somebody else from doing something, right? That could have changed it. But then there are other times that I chose, sometimes joyfully and sometimes not so joyfully, but I chose to do something that I would say altered my path. I could have gone down this path, but I chose not to, or I was going down this path and I chose to go a different way. That's called repentance, right? To change heart and change action. And it's through our repentance that the Lord keeps us moving in the right direction. And I think that's the beauty of following Jesus as opposed to believing in fatalism, right? Fatalism would teach us that life is up to you to navigate, and one wrong move sets you up for disaster the rest of your days. So this is the course, and any deviation from that course, you are now deviated and you will never be able to get back to it. That's not true of a shepherd. It's the sheep. And essentially, sheep are silly creatures, just like our feelings, and they move and they wander in their field. And essentially, the shepherd's like, "Hey, dumb sheep, we're going over there, but I'm going to walk over here 6 times. Fine. But we're going over there. I'm going to walk 10 times. Still cool. You walk 10 times, but we're going over there." That is the beauty of what a good shepherd does to silly sheep, just like us. So, Anna Clayton, for you, as we heard a little bit about your story and how the Lord has provided in your life, maybe a growing up experience that may have, as you look now, think, "Oh man, that is different than most of my friends. That's different than even I thought it should be." But it made you who you are. Are there moments that you can say that God stepped in and changed this direction, but also moments where God used your will, where you said, "I'm going to do this because I believe this is the right thing," to change your course back to Him?
I'm trying to think of a time. I think that a time that I've seen God and just like, I don't really know if this is kind of the answer to your question, but I was thinking about when we were talking earlier of when I first became a Christian, I had called my dad that night and was like, Dad, I became a Christian. I don't really know what that is, but like I've kind of walked through this, and this is
one.
what it means. Yeah, I am one. This is what it means to like have a relationship with him, and I didn't really know. And he was like, well, that's great. He's just in Yazoo City. But he's now telling the story to me as an adult, and he said that was a moment where we were actually at that point we were about to get evicted from our home and move in full time with his mom, and he knew, like, he honestly was thinking, what am I going to do? What's going to happen to Anna Clayton? Obviously, he's a father, and he said in that moment he felt the Lord of just being like, she's going to be okay. She's going to be okay. And I think just being able to like make that decision that night, it was just God's incredible timing with that. Just to be able to turn kind of like that of just like turn the projection of like,
It's beautiful.
I think that's when he felt like I was going to be okay. And hopefully I hope that he felt like he was close to God in that point too. That's always been kind of something of like walking with my dad of just, making sure that he knows that there is hope with Christ. That's something that my dad and I are currently walking through. But I think that at that point, that was such a pivotal moment in time where like God's trajectory truly just like mapping it out.
Thank you for sharing that. I know as also someone who both of my parents struggled with substance abuse. My mom having passed on now, but my dad still being alive and struggling with that. What I've seen is, even in ways I'd never expected, God is nearer to them than I even know.
Yeah.
And the statement, God suffers fools, and I am the chief of fools. But it's the premise that it's like a child. So Jesus says, unless you're like a child, the kingdom, you can't grasp the kingdom, right? So we talked about that last week in the sermon. But I think it's also true whenever we go through this life and things are really hard and we are stuck in really bad systems or bad cycles in this broken system, God is incredibly gracious to us. And so I can imagine, and I don't want to put words in your dad's mouth, but as a father who would be fearful of my daughter having nowhere to go, or at least the thought of whatever she thought was home is no longer that. And for him may not to understand what a Christian technically is, but now you are one. And for God to speak to his heart and say, she's mine.
Yeah.
I got her. And hopefully for him to hear, and I've got you too.
Yeah.
And I believe that through this life, the Lord will continue to allow us to walk, whether, again, people have done this on our behalf and it's no fault of our own we're walking through hard, or we've done this. And now the hard is because of a natural consequence or a list of natural consequences that are coming our way. But God is faithful in both of those situations to say, hey, I got you. You're in this. You're going to be okay. I got you. And I pray that, was it your dad and continues to be your dad's experience.
One of the things that I really resonated with yesterday, I didn't like it, but I resonated with it. Josh, you talked about how, sometimes, these things, which could be terrible circumstances that we walk through, are actually blessings. And I bucked at that a little bit because it's like, well, that doesn't feel like a blessing, know, and it still doesn't feel like a blessing, to think back on some of those things. Yet on the backside, I can see how God has used circumstances and those things to shape me or others that are close to me. I can see the ways that He has moved through circumstances, and in that way, they are blessings. So I think experientially, like that's been true of me. Anna Clayton, I'm curious to know, I mean, as you look back over your story, how have you seen, like, do you feel that? Do you feel like, I mean, obviously those things shape who you are, but do you feel like you are in a different place with God than you would have been otherwise had you not walked through these things?
Like before becoming a Christian, kind of?
Yeah, I mean, even since, because
how's the hard helped?
Yeah, how have these difficult things helped shape your walk with Christ?
I think it's given me ultimately peace that I don't have to be in control.
Yeah.
That I've never in any of my life been in control. And I think that and God taking this is a horse joke, taking the reins and just being the ultimately the one that is kind of driving, that I think has provided peace in my life. The fact that I don't have to have it all together. I get to be a dumb sheep. That was one of my favorite sermons. I know. I'm like, I need to hear Josh buying like a sheep. But that brings so much peace that I have total peace that I don't have to be in control. I don't have to know what's going on next. And I think when I see him working, when I see him moving, I ultimately know, or at least I hope I know. Sometimes my actions, my human flesh. Sure. I hope that I know that it's his plan and his goodness in that. And like when I see, well, that apparently that's a blessing. I don't see it yet, but I also know that like I don't have the best point of view of my life. I'm not driving the ship. I'm not holding the reins. And it's just faith and just knowing that that's the truth. And that's, I think, what I cling to.
That's so good. I remember Matt Chandler, if you follow any of his story, he on Thanksgiving Day years ago, he had a seizure and ended up having a glioblastoma that they thought would take his life within the year. And now he's all these years later still healed and faithfully preaching. But he talked about after that moment, the Lord showing him that adversity destroys the illusion of control. And as people, and I don't know this to be true for you, but I know this is certainly true for me, and probably because of the childhood that I lived, I want to be in control of everything. I want my hands on everything because I can't trust the people to drive it because they've shown that they can't.
Right.
So I'm going to drive it, dang it, and I'm going to drive it well. And ultimately, it's kind of, to use another metaphor, because I think our audience kind of lives with this. Do you remember The Simpsons? Are you too young for The Simpsons?
No.
I feel like you are. I feel like you don't understand The Simpsons. Mike, do you remember The Simpsons?
I do.
Chase,
remember
do you? Okay, good. We're all here. Do you remember the intro where Marge is driving the car, but it looks like things are out of control because Maggie's driving the car, and Maggie's the little baby, and the baby's just driving, but it's fake and honking the horn. And a lot of times it feels like that is in our life, right? So we're driving the car. It's chaos.
Me. Yeah.
Go left, go right. We're not even, it's a play steering wheel.
Yeah.
It's an illusion of control. And adversity, although we may not like the way it feels, we may not like the form it comes in, but if it's the thing that destroys that illusion, that false God, that illusion of us being in control, then we praise God for destroying that. I think it's the Oswald Chambers quote, if it is through a broken heart that we see God, then thank God for breaking our heart. And it's it is true. That our controlling nature, so many times we think is driving us towards God, but it's not. It's driving us away. But it's God's grace that he takes away that illusion, shows us we're not in control, which is scary, but ultimately we see he's in control. So we can go back to assuming our natural state, which is dumb sheep, which is really, really nice. Green pastures, still waters. I'm here for it.
That's where the opening hands comes in. In my video, I kind of described of like, that control is what we all do as humans, is we hold our lives completely tightly grasped. And so for the Lord to relinquish that and just to open, sometimes it is me just physically opening my hand and seeing on my palm, God, this is my life and you are using it. And I, like I said earlier, don't have the point of view that you have. So there are going to be things that I just have no idea what you're doing and maybe won't ever. But I think that's just the goodness of like, I have seen when my palm is open, you are doing so much work. And so I know that he's not just going to move one thing right, move one thing left just to see what happens.
Right.
He's so intentionally creating this beautiful part and working through me in all different ways. And so I have total faith knowing that I'm called to open my hands. And that's just where the peace comes from.
That is beautiful.
It is. Thank you. It was a really, really good message. And I want to end probably with this, in the passage we see, taste and see that the Lord is good. And, I'm just really grateful for that. And as we wrap, Josh, you kind of framed that as an invitation to come and experience his goodness. And so what would you say about that for us as we we kind of wrap up the podcast today.
Yeah, with the sermon series being wholly broken and understanding going all the way back to the very first sermon in 2 Corinthians 12:9, right? So Paul asks 3 times for something to be taken away. He calls it a thorn. And essentially Jesus says, no, my grace is sufficient for you and my power is perfected in your weakness. And Paul says, therefore, I will boast all the more gladly in my weaknesses so the power of Christ may rest on me. I think that the way in which we invite the world to taste and see is by being open-handed with our life and our story. That's what David does, right? So going back to verse 0 or the heading, like it's there on purpose to say, I want you to remember Abimelech. Of all the things to forget in a life that is dedicated to God and being his king, as the king, I don't want that ever remembered. Please never remember me acting a fool, throwing up in my beard, clawing at the doorpost to get out of this. But he said, you know what? No. I want you to remember that because that is proof that God is good. And it's, again, usually through our brokenness that people are going to see the power and the glory of God. So in asking people, inviting people to come and taste and see, it will be generally through our story. Don't hide who you are. We're broken. We're crazy. Like that's a whole thing. We know that. But we're God's. And in the way he has redeemed us, he can redeem others. Share that part of your story and let people taste and see his goodness.
Absolutely.
That's great. And that's part of what I so appreciate about Broadmoor. And I think who we're becoming as a body of believers. And we talk a lot about how we value, we cultivate real relationships, and we want to know and be known. And I think it's through these kinds of conversations where we're being real about the things that we walk through and the things that God is doing. That those things become more and more the case for us. And so. So grateful for the conversation today.
Yeah, it was really good.
And Clayton, thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us.
I'm excited.
So looking forward to next week and coming up, what we got this coming
It's relationships.
Yep.
Yeah. It's going to be great.
There you go. So it's been a great series so far and looking forward to seeing how the rest of it pans out. So
love you guys.
Thank you guys.